This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Welcome to Pulse of Africa News. I'm Magdalite Naga. We start with Ethiopia's national dialogue process. Ethiopia's national dialogue process is increasingly being viewed as a potential African model for resolving deep-rooted political and identity-based conflicts, as the country pursues a nationality-owned path to sustainable peace without external mediation or state collapse. In an inclusive interview with Pulse of Africa, Ethiopian National Dialogue Commissioner Dr. Yohannes Adaye said the dialogue is designed to address the fundamental causes of conflict in Ethiopia, including constitutional disputes, governance failures, marginalization, and the politicization of ethnic identity issues that have repeatedly fueled instability across the continent. Dr. Yohannes described the dialogue as a national-wide citizen-centered process aimed at rebuilding Ethiopia's social fabric through open discussions, mutual respect, and collective truth-seeking. Unlike elections or peace agreements that focus on immediate crisis, he said the dialogue targets long-standing structural problems that continue to generate conflict.
In simplest possible terms, Ethiopian national dialogue is an instrument to build sustainable peace in this country, which is hungry for peace. Maybe to go a bit further, dialogue is a process of seeking the truth so as to build, as we said, this social fabric which is being disrupted by continuous sometimes disagreements, sometimes feuds, some other times low-key conflicts, and some other time coming to the level of war. So to dialogue is to search the truth. Where does the fundamental structural cause of the conflict lie?
The commissioner emphasized that Ethiopia's process is nationality and locally owned, distinguishing it from past national dialogues in Africa and in the Middle East that failed due to foreign control or elite-driven agendas. While supported by state institutions, the National Dialogue Commission operates through consultations with communities, political actors, civil society, religious institutions, media, and the Ethiopian diaspora. Consultations with Ethiopians abroad revealed strong consensus around the need for constitutional reform, particularly concerns that ethnic-based federalism has entrenched divisions and undermined coexistent governance defects. Corruption, identity politics, and dual citizenships were also cited as a recurring issue raised during diaspora engagements.
Three things we expect at the end of the national dialogue: national consensus, trust between the state and society, and making dialogue a culture of political culture of Ethiopia.
He said the dialogue is expected to produce three core outcomes: national consciousness, renewed trust between the state and society, and the establishment of dialogue as a political culture, replacing zero-sum politics and armed confrontation. Dr. Yohannes linked Ethiopia's internal dialogue to broader regional stability, arguing that domestic unity strengthens foreign policy credibility and supports peaceful management of shared resources, trade routes, and integration efforts. He stressed that African disputes should be resolved through African-led mechanisms guided by shared values such as Ubuntu and cooperation.
Across the black world, it is only Ethiopia that came up with victorious stories across Ethiopia through Adwa. That really makes Ethiopia different, unique. Again, we are expecting the third Adwa in national dialogue, the second being GERD. And that uniqueness, number one, based on the commitment of the no one forced the government to set up national dialogue.
True.
It took this one as it is a
own
long-term strategy to build peace.
Yeah.
Secondly, when you went down to the people, they say, long overdue. We need it from the very beginning. I wish you were there for 20 years ago, 30 years ago. People, that's why I said, hungry for peace.
Okay.
We are fed up with war. Time and again, you know, people, we live together, but because of that malfunctioning political system during EPRDF from 1991 to 1918, divided us into ethnic lines according to the people. So now we need discussion, debating, conversations, dialogue.
Addressing concerns that the dialogue's recommendations could be ignored, Dr. Yohannes said political legitimacy in Ethiopia is increasingly tied to performance and responsiveness to public demands, making implementation essential for state credibility. As Ethiopia's advance as national dialogue, observes across Africa and beyond are closely watching the process led towards replaceable framework for conflict prevention and state renewal across the continent. Farmers in Zimbabwe are recording significantly higher maize and wheat yields following a 4.3 million fertilizer guarantee provided through the African Fertilizer Finance Mechanism (AFFM), an initiative managed by the African Development Bank Group (AFDB. The guarantee has improved access to fertilizers for local farmers, enabling timely input supply and boosting agricultural productivity across key farming regions. As a result, many beneficiaries have reported doubling their maize and wheat yields, strengthening national food security and farm incomes. AFFM's intervention reduces financial risks for fertilizer suppliers and lenders, encouraging them to extend credit to farmers who would otherwise struggle to access essential inputs. The mechanism plays a critical role in addressing fertilizer affordability and availability, challenges particularly for smallholder farmers. The FDB said the initiative aligns with its broader strategy to support climate-smart agriculture, enhance resilience in food system, and promote inclusive economic growth across Africa. Zimbabwe's agriculture sector remains central to the country's economy and livelihoods, and improved access to fertilizer is seen as a key driver in reversing years of low productivity caused by climate shock and input storage. The African Fertilizer Finance Mechanism continues to support similar programs across the continent as part of efforts to close Africa fertilizer financing gap and accelerate agriculture transformation.
In Ethiopia, more homes and businesses now have access to electricity. Access to power supports education, healthcare, and local businesses. Light changes lives.
The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, has entered a critical phase of delivery, with leaders highlighting digital trade and the rise of African-owned companies as key drivers of a continental economic transformation. Speaking at Friends of the African Continental Free Trade Area breakfast meeting held on the margins of the World Economic Forum, WEF, AfCFTA Secretary General His Excellence Womakale Meni said the agreement-led framework is now complete, marking a major milestone for continental integration. He noted that 50 of the 55 African Union member states have ratified the agreement and that all African Continental Free Trade Area protocols have been concluded. Many described the protocol on digital trade as a decisive shift from rulemaking to execution, stressing that effective implementation will depend on enabling cross-border data flows, interoperable digital payment systems, and trusted data protection frameworks. He emphasized that progress on payments remain a core enabler of trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area, highlighting the continent's economic potential. Many said Africa's digital could reach $720 billion by 2050, offering vast opportunities for the continent's youth. However, he cautioned that without adequate job creation, skill development, and inclusive access, Africa's demographic divide could become a liability.
Whilst we are in an unprecedented assault on the multilateral trading system and global trade, I don't think anybody ever envisaged that we would be in this situation. I do believe that this is a very compelling moment for the continent of Africa to say, okay, AGOA is gone, markets have dried up, supply chains are disrupted, let's build our own domestic market. It may take some time, maybe 10 years or so, but we don't have an alternative. We have to build a domestic market so that young Africans, by the turn of the century, the youngest working force in the world will be in Africa. And so how do we prepare for young people to be part of Africa's economy? And so I think at the heart of the conceptualization about how Africa responds to this current crisis must be accelerated market integration.
To accelerate implementation, many pointed to the ADAPT project launched in 2025 in partnership with World Economic Forum, the Tony Blair Institute and IOTA, which aims to strengthen digital trade readiness across Africa. He also called for sustained private sector engagement, including partnership with global technology firms to expand opportunities for young Africans in sectors such as agri-tech, health tech, and digital services. Echoing this statement, South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Parks Tau, said Africa growth is increasingly being driven by its own companies, signaling a shift away from dependence on external drivers of economic expansion. Africa growth is increasingly driven by its own firms, Tau said, pointing to the rapid rise of African enterprises in fintech, digital services, logistic, renewable energy, agribusiness, and creative industries. He said these sectors demonstrate the continent's growth in competitiveness and innovation capacity.
Africa's growth is increasingly driven by its own firms, with fast-growing companies emerging in fintech, digital services, logistics, renewables, agribusinesses, and creative industries. Second, Africa is emerging as a major data and digital market, with its scale, diversity, and cultural richness creating uniquely valuable data sets. Third, scale does matter. Africa's population is projected to reach around 2.4 billion by 2050, with a rapidly expanding urban middle class. This makes Africa the single largest growing market of the future.
Tao said the trend underscores the need to strengthen industrial policy, expand access to finance, and deepen regional integration to help African companies scale across borders. He added that the FCFTA provides a critical platform for business to access larger markets, build regional value chains, and boost intra-African trade. The minister reaffirmed South Africa's commitment to work with continental partners to promote industrialization, entrepreneurship, and sustainable growth, positioning African firms at the center of Africa's long-term economic transformation. Central African leaders have agreed on urgent fiscal and monetary reforms to shore up weakening economies, ordering the repetition of states' assets and export revenue. Held a broad meeting in Brazzaville under the Central African Economic and Monetary Community, CEMAC. The 6 heads of state resolved to immediately enforce the return of export proceeds, with priority given to companies operating in the extractive sector, according to a post-summit communique. A key focus was the respiration of funds earmarked for environmental restoration in oil-producing areas. Leaders instructed governments to finalize negotiations with international firms to return these resources, seen as critical to restoring liquidity in the regional banking system. The extraordinary summit was conveyed as the region faced sluggish growth, softer commodity prices, climate-related shocks, and tighter global financing conditions, which have increased pressures on public finance and foreign reserves. Leaders also directed member states to accelerate or conclude economic and financial programs, with the International Monetary Fund aligning national budgets with IMF commitments on debt sustainability and external balance consolidation as part of broader efforts to stabilize the Central African Economic and Monetary Community economies. Moving to business news, we have the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, has firmly supported the government's plan to divest a 15% stake in Safaricom PLC, a move valued at $1.6 billion, farming it as a strategic measure to reduce the country's rising public debt. The banking announced in January 2026, positioning the sale as a key source of non-debt financing for priority infrastructure projects. Under the plan, the government will sell part of its 35% holding to South African's Vodacom Group, raising capital without adding further pressure on domestic credit markets. CBK Governor Kamu Thoje emphasized that the decision reflects Kenya's current macroeconomic realities, noting that public debt stood at 68.9% of GDP as of September 2025, up to 67.7% of GDP in June 2025. By avoiding a further build-up of debt, this initiative financing will help us move towards a sustainable debt position and to our debt anchor of 35% NPV of debt relative to GDP, Governor Thoje said. CBK expects the transaction to increase foreign exchange reserves, stabilize the exchange rate, reduce domestic borrowing, and support lower interest rates. The deal includes Vodacom paying roughly $0.27 per share of the 6.01 billion shares, representing a 23.6 premium over the 6-month volume-weighted average price as of December 2025. The government will also receive $314 million upfront via a divided secured loan, accelerating liquidity for immediate needs. Total potential inflows, including divided monetization, could reach approximately $1 billion. Flutterwave has launched stablecoin balances for merchants and users across Africa, marking a major step in its mission to modernize the continent's financial ecosystem. Developed in collaboration with blockchain infrastructure, provided turnkey and AI-powered banking platform, Novian, the initiative aims to offer faster, cheaper alternatives to traditional cross-border payments. The new feature enables African entrepreneurs, multinationals, and individual users to hold and transact in stablecoins, starting with the USDC and USDT, alongside conventional flat currencies such as USD and NGN. By bypassing traditional banking intermediaries, Flutterwave seeks to reduce transaction costs and friction, particularly for cross-border trade. To accelerate business growth in Africa, we must make it safe, easy, and affordable for businesses to accept all forms of regulated payment methods, including stablecoin. From a global customer base, said Nakim Abuka, led remittance and stablecoin partnerships at Flutterwave. Turnkey provides the embedded wallet infrastructure with verifiable blockchain security, with Nuvion budgets and the gap between flat and stablecoin systems using its AI-powered banking platform. The rollout begins with a select group of merchants, with plans to expand to all approved Flutterwave merchants later in 2026. Bryce Gufferson, CEO and co-founder of Turnkey, emphasized the partnership's purpose, We share Flutterwave's beliefs that stablecoin offer an incredibly efficient way to accelerate payments and put more money directly into the hands of business owners rather than intermediaries. The move positions Flutterwave at the forefront of Africa's fintech transformation, leveraging blockchain technology to strengthen financial inclusion, enhance cross-border commerce, and streamline payments for the continent business. Now to sport news. The self-styled rugby greatest rivalry between South Africa and New Zealand will conclude with a fourth test in Baltimore in the U.S., officials said, with the fixture scheduled for the AM&T Bank Stadium on September 12th. The All Blacks will tour South Africa for 3 tests, 2 in Johannesburg and 1 in Cape Town, as well as 4 midweek games against United Rugby Championship sides. One of the Johannesburg tests will be played at the Carvonos 94,000-seater Soccer City Stadium in Soweto, the hosted the 2010 Soccer World Cup final. The team will then travel to Baltimore for the 4th game as South Africans rugby and their New Zealand counterparts seek to maximize commercial benefit. But with the 2031 Men's Rugby World Cup and 2033 Women's Global Finals to be hosted in the U.S., World Rugby has had a hand in the decision to play in Baltimore. Partnering with unions to bring world-class content to key U.S. cities is the heart of the sports strategy to grow the market, World Rugby, CEO Alan Glappin said in the statement. There are few bigger rivals than the New Zealand's TV South Africa, and to be able to showcase the best of our sports in Baltimore, one of the 27 super engaged cities and regions in the Rugby World Cup hosting process, is an exciting prospect, inspiring more sports fans in the U.S. to fall in love with the rugby, the statement added. Up next are the latest weather forecast from the region. That's it for the hour. Thank you for tuning in and goodbye.